There you go, Beverly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Beverley Simpson. I'm the emergency manager for Los Alamos County, and I'm going to visit with you all today and tell you a little bit about what my job entails. It's been quite busy last few years, busier than normal, right? Oh gosh, now I'm huge. That's crazy. Doesn't it seem like the world is in a constant state of emergencies these days between COVID-19 pandemic, wildfires, decimating the US, and political unrest and wars in other countries and nations and democracies? It certainly feels that way. Emergencies are hard to ignore. As the emergency manager for Los Alamos County, I plan for disasters, accidents, and other emergency scenarios. I also collaborate with the county's leadership team to assess potential risks and develop best practices for addressing them. I also coordinate with LANL and other external agencies to include the Pueblos National Forest Service, national parks, state parks, other jurisdictions like Sandoval County for this past fire, also Bernalillo County, Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management, and FEMA, Federal Emergency Management. Our department is responsible for designing procedures that explain what to do in an emergency and creating preventative measures to reduce the likelihood of those emergencies occurring. Our department, by our department, I mean that myself and Cody Ulrich, he is my assistant. He's the emergency management specialist, and we're a team of two. Our department accomplishes all these tasks by a multi-pronged approach: preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. And I'll discuss a little bit about each of those so that you have an understanding of what it entails. I'm sure you do already, since you live in Los Alamos County and we've had several emergencies. Preparedness. These activities increase the community's ability to respond when a disaster occurs. Typically, preparedness means taking measures to enhance our ability to respond, recover, and mitigate. We do this by developing mutual aid agreements, our policies and procedures, training. We train individuals and other response agencies, employees, concerned citizens. It runs the gamut. Schools, we also bring in training for the schools. And as you're aware, for some of the businesses and the schools, there's been, over the past few years, numerous active shooter trainings conducted by the police department, and then also the fire department is involved heavily with emergency response and management too. One of the key things is our policy development. So we guide the county's policies for how to respond and prepare to an emergency. Examples of those are our emergency operations plan that actually gets reviewed and updated every year if need be. It's a federal requirement for grant funding that the emergency operations plan gets updated every 5 years. We also have a hazard mitigation plan that same thing, reviewed annually, updated at least every 5 years. Those two are a means in which we receive federal funding from FEMA and DHS for to assist the county in a multitude of different endeavors, whether it be bomb team robots, radio systems, a drone for the fire department, election security. Did apply for some grant funding this year for 3.5 million. And that did include election security, one of the mobile electronic election units that can be deployed to different spaces and places. We also assist with businesses and their endeavors for preparedness. That includes evacuation planning, their plans developing continuity of operations plans. The county just finished ours, and that is, countywide, and that's, should we lose services if there's power, if God forbid COVID outbreak again, that we have a number of individuals, 80% or maybe a little bit less teleworking. How do we continue business operations if we're not here in the facility that we are assigned to? Emergency contact lists are included, and then lists of essential services and what are the steps each of those departments or businesses need to take to get their jobs done. Education and training, I mentioned that. That's a core role for Office of Emergency Management. We do have training ongoing throughout the year. Upcoming training we have in the county right now. We have some school training coming in December, and large animal evacuation and sheltering training coming to our public service, our animal control officers. That's next month. And so we continue to work at that. We perform outreach to different entities to find out what they need, to be successful as far as in their plans and their preparedness plans and their training. And really the end product is that we have individuals acting and responding in the same way. If we perform that training and they're prepared, then there's less likely of a lot of questions being asked, the response not going as well as it should. So we continue to work on that and provide that training. Let's see. Obviously, I made a few notes so that I could make sure I covered everything. There's a lot to this job. Some of that training also is like, fire extinguisher training or things like that. We want to, or AED. We want to make sure people understand how to use the equipment they have and the tools they have to respond appropriately and be prepared. Communication, obviously that's a key in our role in emergency management. I work hand in hand with the public information officer for Los Alamos County, Julie Williams-Hill. She's a godsend. She helped me, held my hand a lot during COVID to make sure we got the press releases out. And then with the recent fire in April, May, June timeframe, the Cerro Pilado, to make sure that we did inform our community and to get that messaging out for the Ready, Set, Go. And then we facilitate emergency partnerships, as I mentioned, working with different entities. That's ongoing, that's on a daily basis. We keep each other informed. We perform outreach if there's needs required from for the county or other businesses. We're always poking and prodding and trying to get answers for different things as different events occur, or hazards, whatever the case may be. We're always re-educating ourselves, educating ourselves, and helping to educate others and provide those answers. We and that goes hand in hand with enhancing our emergency response coordination. I think there's a question just popped up. So I think I didn't read the whole thing. I just caught the question. Early on during COVID, we got regular counts of positive tests in the county. So the state has stopped reporting that. And so as far as the information flowing to the emergency managers, that is not coming through the Department of Health. We do have the COVID newsletter that goes out from the county that does include updated information as we receive it. I can check into, can it be started again? I'm afraid the answer is going to be no, because the Department of Health doesn't have the bandwidth to continue those endeavors, especially since, as the president mentioned, that we are no longer in a pandemic, we're and it's endemic to the area, to the United States, to the nation is COVID, and we're going to be living with it for a very long time, just as we do with the flu. Let's see. One of the preparedness, as I mentioned, is grants. You're very welcome. Grant funding. This county, we're very lucky. We do receive a lot of grant funding that does entail grant applications and dealing with the state to get those grants approved. And it's quite a thick document at the end product. But as I mentioned, we've been lucky. We do get a lot of grant funding. Last year, we received about $860,000 in grant funding. And that was for, we received some like $86K for radios to get tri-band radios for our police department, just a few of them, just to start communicating with those, see how they work on the system. We received a mobile connectivity trailer that is a cell on wheels. It's a Verizon unit that we can deploy out to different areas, and so that they can have cell service and satellite phone service if needed. We deployed that out for into Sandoval County for this Cerro Pilado fire. So we did receive that, and that's I think that's very good. We for the community and for the state, because it's the first one that is deployed in New Mexico. I know the state is looking at getting some more to deploy out. Yes, other counties, every single jurisdiction and the pueblos are eligible for grant funding. So the state gets an allocated amount from DHS every year. I believe I'll have to look at the funding amount. It's usually over 4 million, and that gets divvied out between all the applicants. And obviously there's grading criteria if the request, your project request, meets the intent of the grant and also the intent of the state as far as what their priorities are. We do get guidance on that when the notice of funding is released, so that we can start scripting our projects and then perform outreach to different entities within our communities to see what the needs are. This isn't just for emergency management. This is actually for other departments. Emergency management itself, besides communication, computers, things like that, there's not a lot that we need as far as deployable resources. Do we know if people who are infected are vaccinated? The majority from the literature I've read is yes, they are vaccinated individuals who are becoming infected. And I know different states have implemented, it doesn't matter if you've been vaccinated or not. If there's outbreaks, they're recommending everyone wear masks now, not just the unvaccinated. We do have an emergency alert system, the Code Red system, and that was used during the Cerro Pilado fires. It's also used for different events throughout the community. Those are emergency events, so they are kind of relegated to public safety as far as with the police department, if there's a suspicious individual or a vehicle, things of that sort, or like for the fire department, if there are fires, if there's, you know, a large event as far as vehicles, crashes, things like that. And we pray we never have a mass casualty. That would also warrant an emergency alert from Code Red. The next, one of the other factors, I mentioned the preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Mitigation actually refers to the measures to prevent an emergency, reduce the chance of those emergencies happening, or reduce the damaging effects of an unavoidable emergency. Typical mitigation measures include establishing building codes that obviously is through the county, zoning requirements, constructing barriers for flooding, things like that. So this is a whole of county and community effort. And through mitigation, we also develop plans. I mentioned our hazard mitigation plan that identifies the hazards within our community. As you're well aware of, fires are number one. We do have some flooding. We do have the reservoir. Mostly that will go downhill, but we do have critical infrastructure in on that, that route of the flood waters, gas, electricity, things of that nature, which would impact the county. We also try to assist homeowners too with mitigating some of the damaging effects of, like, the wildfires when the fire department or the county does the tree trimming, the clearing, mastication. You saw that reported during Cerro Pilado fire, during even the infancy stages of that fire, in the beginning of trying to clear that debris out of the way, and making that defensible space so that individuals and their property were safe from harm's way. The THIRA, which is a threat hazard identification, it ties into the hazard mitigation plan, where we're looking at the threats. We're seeing what we can do to reduce those hazards, whether it be installing a bridge over, the reservoir road keeps getting washed out. Camp May Road with the flooding after Cerro Grande, not so much Los Conchas, but Cerro Grande, where it flooded and washed out the roads in areas. So we look at different things we can do to mitigate future effects if similar events should happen. Obviously, we continue, thankfully, with the monsoons to get some nice rains, and that just does impact our roadways on some of those flooding. Would we also be able to use something like Amber Alerts? We do tie into IPAWS, which is the national system. And so that will go out. It overrides all the other systems since it is the national system, and it is less prone to some of the issues that we've recently experienced with Code Red, and we've worked with the company to try to mitigate a lot of those. And I will tell you that we are researching other companies too for our emergency alert notification system, which will impact everyone who's signed up for the Code Red. They'll have to subscribe to this new vendor, but we're hopeful that we won't have as many issues with some of the different things that we've experienced with the current Code Red system. They continue to do upgrades, and they're very responsive to our questions and our needs. But sometimes those require software upgrades to the platform, and those could take a year or two to happen. Thank you, Jody. Are the county? Yes. Are the county and lab coordinating an evacuation plan in case of a radiological incident? Yes. And so we did work together. Obviously, there was the joint press releases, and LANO put out situation reports as far as what was going on, and that did tie in to the county. We do not practice evacuations during school and working hours for the general public. LANO does practice. it's probably weekly but these events do occur, and it's for their exercises and their planning. What we have in our possession as far as our emergency management and built into the Code Red system, our GIS, our mapping platform, we have the protective action zones for Lanel. And so that's depending on whatever the PAR action, those will determine which areas of the county should or will need evacuation. As you're aware of with Los Alamos National Laboratory, the amount of those agents or the chemicals or the isotopes are in smaller quantities. Those do, the chemicals get reported. That's an EPA requirement. They get reported every year. So, so emergency management, we work hand in hand with emergency management at the laboratory. So we don't practice evacuations because that would impact schools, it would impact businesses on the county side. Lanel does practice and evacuate. Probably they're just their events, they're probably weekly, honestly. All right, so some of the mitigation approaches, as I mentioned, we could alter the hazard. That would be modifying the hazard to eliminate the frequency of it. One example that came to mind was how we put the concrete over the sides of the mountains to mitigate or lessen the likelihood of any of the rocks falling, right? Those falling rock hazards. We still have them, but not as much if we do have a large flooding event, God forbid we have an earthquake, that's a whole new world. And we do have some plans for that. We do try to prepare for everything that the county has a vulnerability for. But given the magnitude and the scale of that, we'd be relying on national resources to come in and help us. Averting the hazards, redirecting the impact away. I mentioned the reservoir. That road gets messed up every time there's a larger flooding event. We are actually looking at different structural bridges for that area, but that's DPU. Utilities is looking at that, and we did apply for a grant a few years ago. We did not follow through with it. We had the project submitted and everything, but another event happened, so that pretty much wiped out all the planning of the initial concept. So looking at that in the future to begin those conversations again. Adapting to hazards, modifying structures, and altering design standards of construction. We did see that with code enforcement and the different requirements from the county as far as new builds, right? As new housing with stucco, with fire retardant shingles or metal roofs, things like that. And then avoiding the hazard, keeping people away from the hazard, obviously, or limiting development in those risk areas. Are you involved with decisions whether to close the trails on the county? Yes, those the subject matter expert during fires is the fire department. So based on the information provided to them, the direction that they see the fire behavior acting, they provide the information to us as far as what the county needs to be looking at as far as dangers, mitigation, and things like that. So that was not an EM decision. I know it was unpopular. And I believe there is more public input now. The answer is probably and a maybe, because really it's dependent on fire behavior, and the fire chief is, is that subject matter expert. And in addition to those IMT teams that come in, LANL buys in, and we try to, have a coordinated response. As you know, LANL is just, if, Omega, you cross the bridge and you're on LANL property. But for the last fire, it was 3 miles from the lab and 5 from the county. So decisions were made in coordination with each other. And then we have to pay attention to, if those trails remained open and that fire jumped. Oh, this would be before a fire breaks out. Yeah, if the fire jumped our holding point, how would we evacuate those individuals on the trails? And then it becomes a life safety issue. And so that's really the considerations that are taken when we close the trails. It's really a life safety measure. I hope that answered your question, but it will be, I'll make note of this and be sure that that'll be one of our after actions. We just finalized actually the after action for the Cerro Pilado fire, and I will make a note of this so that it stays in the front of our minds in the event of the same issues arising or same needs as far as closing the trails. But there's always, I was gonna say, there's always public comment, but I will find out with parks and trails what the means are as far as to address this comment, and how do we get an answer. So I'll pass this up to Corey, and we'll find out, hopefully get an answer back to you shortly on can this be incorporated, and if there's any public meetings in the near future. I know for the hazard mitigation plan, we actually have started the kickoff meetings, but we are open to public comment right now. So that is a venue too. And I can get that information on how to make those comments, but I know our public information officer did put out that information. But as mentioned before, not everyone has internet. So for venue, so I'll take that. Yes, fire marshal is definitely hand in hand with our fire chief. So then I wanted to, I guess we're okay on time. We talked about preparedness, mitigation, response. As you know, these are actions carried out immediately right before the event, during the event, and immediately after. Cerro Pilado is a prime example where we did do a pre-evacuation of the large animals, looking at the fire and the movement, its activity. It made a lot more sense as far as a public safety and resident safety, life safety, to get those vehicles with large trailers, to get the large animals out. So worked with Expo New Mexico, different emergency managers, Santa Fe, Espanola, Sandoval County, to see where we could house large animals, get some pens, coordinate those efforts to get the large animals out, so we didn't have that, the larger equipment blocking traffic. Worked with the Pueblo to make sure Rendia Canyon was accessible, that we could get small vehicles out through the roads there. So Public Works was amazing, helped us get some gravel in those low-lying areas, and then so made sure that happened. We actually did it, that was part of preparedness phase, but it did go over into the response, just to make sure that that we had keys to the gates, and any car, especially those low, those what do you call them? The vehicles with the low clearance could get through that area too. We I put response actions may include activating the emergency operations center. So the county does not have a designated emergency operations center, a fixed one. That's something I hope in the future I can get established. That will take grant funding and obviously county funding to make that happen. But currently, we'll either activate our emergency operations center in the police department in the training room. We have looked at fire department 3 down in White Rock, and the availability of using that large training room to activate. And so we'll bring in key individuals, representatives for, we have different sections within the Emergency Operations Center, and those coordinate the activities in the field, whatever the incident commander at the incident command post requires. The EOC will provide on-site leadership. So that's the individuals in planning, operations, finance, right? Because someone's got to pay that check, right? So we have those different the sections within the Emergency Operations Center. A lot of that was conducted virtually during the Cerro Pilado fire. We did have public transit, police, emergency management, fire department. Thank God for Marla Brooks. She was amazing as a volunteer within the EOC to help us coordinate those evacuations of the large animals and then also the assisted living facilities. We wanted to make sure that we got them out early, and so that there was no life safety issues that we needed to worry about, besides the residents in their homes. And that was the next phase, as you're aware of, with the Ready, Set, Go program. We were in set, very, very close to hitting go. How can we, the little people, be allies and provide support in times of crisis? Listen to the messaging that's sent out. I know our dispatch center gets overwhelmed with calls as far as, with the fire and things like that. If we send out an emergency alert notification or a general alert says, we are aware of the smoke in this area, it is being monitored. Please don't call the dispatch center. Same with, if there's a suspicious individual. So that's related to the code red messaging and our emergency alert messaging. Make sure that your homes are fire-wise. That's huge. Obviously, fires are our number one impact within our county. To have, if we ask you to evacuate, I know it is, some people will write it out. New Mexico doesn't have a mandatory evacuation. So we ask that you do leave. Thankfully, we're not like the hurricanes where they do happen a lot and people have to leave their homes a lot. And the event may change with us. Those fires, their erratic behavior and the fire behavior is changing. We saw that with Cerro Pilado. It didn't act the same as it has in the previous fires. So, have that defensible space around your properties. Be aware. Do report things you see. And then I know for one of our future endeavors for emergency management is standing up a citizens emergency response team. Cody and I have both done a training. We're prepared. We're program managers. It's really about us getting the staffing. We need to increase our staffing in order to be able to do all the outreach we really would like to do as far as the preparedness to get people involved, to provide more understanding of different events. Different jurisdictions have their CERT teams do traffic control. Others help balloon fiesta. If for different states across the nation, they'll use their CERT teams actually to help with building collapses. After they've been trained, they'll allow them not the high impact structural damage sites, but to assist with homes, to look for people trapped, so that we can get those the responding organizations or response entities into those areas. And I know with Hurricane Katrina and Rita, they were utilized to after the flooding resided and the imminent danger was gone, to assist with looking at the homes, feeding animals. There's so much we can do to prepare for, but then with the COVID clinics, I could not have done, I think we did, I think last count's been 37 vaccine clinics without the volunteerism that exists in this community. I probably had 50 people reach out to volunteer to assist with the vaccine clinics. We had, I don't know how many, probably over 100 individuals making masks, in the beginning of COVID. This community is amazing. And I could not have done, we couldn't have achieved, the vaccination rate that we did without the assistance of the community and the providers, Nambe Pharmacy and Trinity Urgent Care, to help us get these vaccines out. So, I mean, if you see an opportunity to volunteer, please take it. Help your neighbor. I know initially when the pandemic first started, it was about please check on your neighbors. There's so many different things that anyone can assist with. And so I know I ranted on for a while on that. This has been an amazing and challenging 2.5 years, but just amazing to see what this community is capable of and the people in it. I have been so blessed to be in this position, to be able to do what I do. But as I mentioned, I could not have done it without the volunteers and the help of other county agencies too, in the departments. And then last but not least is recovery. Really, this is all about getting us back to normal, get us back or as near normal as we can after an event. It's getting, whether it be, if it's a fire like Cerro Grande, getting those resources in here to help with, whether it be FEMA with their recovery agents doing public assistance and individual assistance to help with the homeowners, to get, reimbursed for the damages, get people, in a home or a trailer, whatever it be, to get housing for those that need it. Let's see what else. Yeah, it includes restoration of basic services. If it's if we have, a large power outage, if we have one of the transformers going out, do we need backup power? Things like that. What can we bring in the recovery mode to assist us in getting back to normal? Additional health care. I mean, Red Cross. There's so many different aspects and agencies that play into the recovery mission. As you saw with hurricanes, those are ongoing. Some are years, and as we saw with the fires, some of those and some of our homeowners, it took quite a long time to receive the reimbursement and to get back on their feet, honestly. And it takes a toll emotionally and mentally and financially. I think actually that concludes my quick overview of emergency management. I can tell you no day's the same. There are so many different things that go on in this position, whether it be the grants, whether it's policies, public outreach, meeting with our other jurisdictions, developing those partnerships before an event happens so that we really have a great network to reach out to during an event. And so I wanted to open it up for questions.
And you don't really need at this point to put it in the chat. If you just want to raise your hand or just let me see you and I'll call on you or start talking. Everyone's on no picture, so I can't see you. Does anyone have a question or a comment here? Well, I have a couple.
Okay.
I try to give you all first choice here. So first of all, I wanted to thank you personally because I had a friend who did not understand that getting the first flu shot, the first COVID shot, he said, well, I'm going to visit my grandchildren and I don't want to give them COVID. So I had to explain that that was not the way it worked. And then I couldn't get her an appointment. And she said, well, I'm not getting one. And she was an older person and had had several heart attacks. So I said, I'm just going to do it. So Julie, you may or may not know, is on the board of the League of Women Voters. So
Yes, yeah, I do.
I said, Julie, I need help. I need help right now. So she got me to you, and you and my friend got the shot. So that's good, and I wanted to thank you personally for that. But the other thing, I was curious about, as we build new schools in Los Alamos, I don't understand why removing the door from the outside and putting windows to the ground is safer.
So I am not a building code expert. So let me write that down and I can get you an answer.
I mean, I understand.
For escape, probably, I'm thinking if it's the windows, doors, there, I'm sure there's probably has to do with the amount of structure in between as far as wood. I'm not sure, so I'm not going to try to answer that one for you, Lord.
I mean, I say that just because Veronica had doors to the outside, so you could go through the hall, you could go through the outside if there were an emergency inside, and they took out the doors and put in windows, which seems less safe to me, but I don't know, I mean, I'm just giving an opinion that I was questioning. So when builders of schools, because now we're looking at 2 more schools, do they have to go through the codes and everything from Los Alamos, right?
Oh, yeah, yes, I believe every structure within Los Alamos has to go through building and codes. And that includes, and especially those newer ones, there's new codes that they have to follow, like tearing down the Hilltop house, that requires all the updated codes and everything. So the wiring and things like that. So that's why you see for those remodels or add-ons that individuals run into some issues because they have to follow the new codes, not the codes of what their home was built to at that time.
Seems reasonable. Thank you.
There was a question about election security. So the election security assistance. So one of the key priorities from Department of Homeland Security what is election security. As you've seen in the past, there's been allegations of election fraud, you know, and messing with ballots, things like that. So during my discussions with our county clerk, I asked if there was a way that the county could, we could step up our election security. And we talk about, and it really came to light during the Cerro Pilado fire, when we have, when we weren't going to be able to potentially use some of the buildings that have been identified for the election process. As you know, it's the Muni building, using council chambers, but then also down in White Rock. So we were looking at evacuating town site and not White Rock. So as doing the research, we found that they're basically an election in the box. And so individuals and their secure platforms that can be deployed out. Portable, it's not a portable building, but it's that concept, but it has all the infrastructure within it so that we could take it to an area identified and set it up to be able to continue with elections.
Wow. We have currently two of the candidates for, I think we have two. So it's who are running for county council. So that's good to hear that we're all safe to be able to vote. You know, it is the League of Women Voters. So we're pretty big on that voting part. Yeah,
Definitely.
So does anyone have any other questions? I see. I guess I have one more, which is, so for the county, I know a number of people were working at home during COVID. Yes. So I guess it's sort of a two-pronged question. One is, are some people still working from home? And the second part is that, is it okay to just do that and not pollute the air with people driving up or something? And
right. So this is Bev's perception. This is not the county's answer. It during COVID, it has proved to be a safe and effective use of individuals' time for the most part. There are some, key functions within businesses, the county, things like that you're still required to come into work, because that's really how the job's going to get done. But I know that in the county itself, with in our finance department, if you're on a computer all day long and and they're doing the budgets, the financials, unless there's the county council meetings or presentations, you really can accomplish a lot from home. I know Lanel is they haven't, I don't know the exact number of individuals still teleworking, but it is, I believe, this is just a guesstimate on my part, about 40%. They have found that it's effective and it didn't impact work production, as productivity. So they're continuing that. I know other businesses are doing the same. My niece is in banking and she's doing it all from home too. She's in Phoenix. But we did find during COVID, with the deployment of the resources, the ability to VPN and secure settings through our IT departments, that more and more individuals are able to do telework or split that however it looks for their department.
That's good.
With this road traffic going on, I think it's a great idea. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah.
With all the road construction and the backup. Yeah.
So I see that Bob is wanting to say, oh, maybe he is answering my question, but he said,
yeah.
He guessed about lowered windows and closed doors in a fire. You may not want to open the door to the room you're in, fire on the other side. And so a window egress becomes valuable, except you can't get out the windows, Bob.
Unless we break them.
Well, and then I I'm sure there's safety glass. I would be
Yeah.
positive of that. So
But you would think so, especially you're talking schools, and some of those have really invested in bulletproof glass too. So yeah.
this may be, and this very well may be that. In fact, I know on one side of the room,
You can certainly break a window, but after you break it open, can you get out of it? That is it too high for you to crawl out? That's one of the reasons for lowering the window height, I think. No?
Especially for children, could be.
Yeah, children and elders. Yeah. Anyway, that's all.
yeah, it sounds reasonable to me.
So we have very limited exits from town. How do you manage the obvious traffic jams in an emergency? We actually will designate different roads, say the main hills for incoming traffic, and a truck route would be downhill, or we'll close one lane, do things like that in an obvious emergency. And then we'll coordinate with Los Alamos National Laboratory, have Lionel ask their employees to go down Pajarito. So, to minimize that. Obviously, it's all going to hit a loggerhead when you get down to New Mexico 4, where everything converges, or down, on Tavi. But we'd have public safety down there directing traffic, and we use signage and other things to direct traffic and get emergency alerts and press releases out for individuals.
So how many? So Los Alamos is around, I don't know, 19 or 20,000 residents, including everyone.
19, yes.
So if we increase that to 30,000 even, and we needed to get out of here, would that be?
Yes, it's feasible. So that's what we worked on during the fire. We actually coordinate with the schools so that the buses are at a different time than Lano employees, and then which will be a different time than town site, right, for our evacuation. So we have that staggered approach so that we can get parents to their kids out safely, and then our residents out safely. And so then, that came into play with Cerro Pilado, besides the coordination, which we do for snow events too, and and school closures, we coordinate for all of those things, and that's on a regular basis as those events occur, and we have pre-planning for that. So yes, it will work. It'll be a coordinated approach. Obviously, if people self-deploy, do things like that, there will be an impact, but we don't anticipate it will be that big of an impact, so that we can continue with the operations.
Okay. So does anyone else have a question, or should we let Beverly go keep us safe?
Thanks.
I don't see any questions unless I'm missing something. I think I just asked Rebecca's. Okay. Well, we can't thank you enough. We've all been so appreciative of you, Beverly, with this, particularly the COVID and the fire. I think we felt safe, and things were under control, and we didn't need to fear itself, right? Sounds like
Right.
Roosevelt there. But yes, and so we can't thank you enough for coming today and speaking with us. We thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.